Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. I'm joined today by Dylan Beynon from MindBloom, CEO founder there. How you doing today, Dylan?
I'm fired up to jam with you today, Joe. Let's do
Yeah,
it.
this is gonna be fun. All right,
Yeah.
so let's give folks a quick explanation. What is MindBloom?
MindBloom is arguably America's largest provider of legal psychedelic therapy. We have provided and facilitated over 654,000, as of today, psychedelic therapy sessions for people suffering from anxiety, depression, and PTSD. We offer a 6-session ketamine therapy treatment program with both sublingual ketamine therapy, dissolved under the tongue, and injectable ketamine therapy. It's 100% from home. We're in, I think, 38 states right now, reaching about 85% of Americans. We launched MindBloom in mid-2019, and we're the first called like visible, notable, scaled, venture-backed company to really take what a lot of incredible providers were doing with sublingual ketamine therapy initially and bring it out into a larger national scale. And I think really importantly is that from the outset, we built a program and platform and facilitation protocol that's trying to give every single American the equivalent of like a world-class facilitator and psychedelic therapy program to help get the most out of ketamine in like a psychedelic therapy format, all from the comfort and convenience of a home at a price that everyday Americans can afford. Americans like my family, which were in the bottom 20% working poor of America when I was growing up and dealing with my mom and sister's mental health issues. We've published by far and away the largest peer-reviewed clinical studies in ketamine or psychedelic therapy history in peer-reviewed in like top psychiatric journals. Sure. Bring to my wall behind me. I was literally on first vacation a long time when our first study was officially published and cried tears of pride and joy, which I don't do often when I'm not on psychedelics. and those studies demonstrate and prove out that both ketamine therapy, but especially ketamine therapy with our program, which hopefully we can talk about today a bit, if there's something you and your audience would be interested in, is the best treatment that exists today for anxiety, depression, and PTSD, both in terms of working for much more people at a larger degree or effect size with way fewer side effects and way faster.
Yeah, right on. Thank you. And then let's kind of talk about you a little bit. How did you end up here? Like I think I read you've had a couple other successful businesses in the past before MindBloom, and like how did mental health and ketamine also show up for you?
That's really a story. I to get to work on this, the change I most wanted to see in the world, psychedelic medicine, become accepted and widely available to people, and to get to do it like it's an art and try to craft with a bunch of other people who are just as mission obsessed about psychedelic medicine as I am. We have 186 people in MindBloom right now. To craft the world's most transformational, magical, and effective psychedelic therapy experiences. It's giving me goosebumps right now. Like this dream come true doesn't begin to describe it. And one of the reasons that it's really deeply meaningful to me is I built 2 other venture-backed tech companies, both in areas that were personally meaningful to me, areas that I thought I had, experienced in my lifetime and friends and family had. One was in voting in elections. So I built a company called Voters Friend. That was one of the biggest voting and election kind of social platforms in the country. It was acquired by a company called democracy.com. And then I built a company as co-founder called Mighty, which is around still 11 or 12 years later, helping people get fair and faster outcomes from the justice system. So really people injured in car accidents, construction accidents, and motor vehicle accidents. And I left Mighty about 7 years ago now to start MindBloom, both because psychedelic medicine was life-changing, which feels like an understatement somehow for me, and also because I really, really, really wanted to work on the mental health crisis. And the reason I really, really wanted to work on the mental health crisis is because it was one of the biggest parts of my life growing up was living in a family that was just obliterated by mental illness. So growing up, my mother and my sister were both severely mentally ill. So my mother, she was both schizophrenic and an addict, and we tried all the traditional treatment options to help her at great expense to our working poor family. My adoptive stepfather who raised me, was my hero, was a mailman and drug dealer and then city bus driver. Uh, and none of it worked for my mother. And so we completely lost her to her mental illness. She ended up homeless for 15 years before being found dead of a fentanyl and methamphetamine overdose in an alley a few years ago. And just a year after my mother died, my dad found my sister also dead from an overdose, fentanyl, right after she'd gone out of a 90-day inpatient rehab facility. So not only have my entire life I've really thought about how tragic it was and how powerless we felt to try to help them. I mean, frustrating doesn't begin to describe it. And I guess one of the reasons frustrating doesn't begin to describe it because their mental illness didn't just affect them; it like destroyed our family. So it took me a long time to get over the anger and resentment, and hatred towards my mother, and realize that she just was deeply sick. That was a big part of my healing journey, starting with MDMA, helped me realize that. But I grew up in a really violent, chaotic, traumatic household. And probably because of that, had both complex PTSD and probably hyperactivity, impulsivity, ADHD. So ADHD without inattention.
Mm. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing all that and being so vulnerable here on air. It's you know, all too common what you've experienced, and it makes sense why you've wanted to commit so much time to it. So um like when did this kind of psychedelic topic or ketamine topic and like the efficacy of these things come to your awareness?
When I was so for me growing up, I think my defense mechanism or coping mechanism to get through the trauma was to just go, to be on all the time. I grew up in Anaheim next to Disneyland, which is affectionately nicknamed Anacrime. And I was just really, really, I think, driven to run through the trauma. So I was just like an absolute like electrified monster growing up. Like I slept 5 hours a night. I was valedictorian in my high school, like near perfect SAT score, captain of science Olympiad, captain of academic decathlon. I played football for 12 years. I was MVP and captain of a bunch of my teams. Uh, and so from the outside, it would look like I had it all figured out. I was achieving. It was really, probably it looked like I was really regulated. But in reality, I think my coping mechanism, I played running back in football, was just to run through everything. Uh, and I think when you're running through everything, that includes running through people. And it certainly includes running through, any emotions that I was having, which I would just push down and just like power through. And so as a result, I was able to get a full scholarship to Wharton School of Business, the #1 undergraduate business school in the world. Later, I didn't learn anything. And it's the same school that Elon and Trump went to. But while I was there, I was very, very unhappy. I was getting in fist fights. I'm lucky that I didn't get kicked out of school or jailed or worse. I didn't like people. I didn't like to meet people. And I had a really negative relationship with others in the world. While I was in college, I started learning about positive psychology. I stumbled into it, the science of happiness. And as I was learning about positive psychology, what I started to see was a picture that, one, I'm not happy. Two, all the strategies and tactics I have to become happy are the wrong ones, scientifically proven. And three, that I'm not focused on it at all, that I'm only focused on all of these like achievement, getting A's, winning at things. But I'm actually not doing any self-inquiry into like, how do I feel? Am I happy? Am I getting actually what I really want out of life? Do I even know what to want out of life? And so for me, this was like a quarter life crisis, and a real crisis of faith. I was so arrogant. I thought I knew everything, and starting to see the cracks of, wait, what if you actually don't know anything? Around that time, I had a close friend who I really trusted, who really encouraged me to try MDMA. And at the time, growing up in not just with an addict mother, but like a house of addicts. Because if you have an addict parent, or at least for my experience, for having an addict parent, what happened was that meant that they're addicts in and out of the house all the time. In fact, with my mother, sometimes felt like we couldn't send her back to rehab, because every time we sent her back to rehab, she would come back and immediately keep doing a bunch of drugs, but now have a bunch of addict friends that were in and out of the house, which was quite horrifying as a kid. And so because of that, I was terrified of trying anything that was, colloquially referred to as a drug, i.e., Schedule 1 psychoactives. But I knew something really needed to change, and I was at this kind of rock bottom moment for me. I had just actually recently, before this, like gotten into a fist fight that I had started, and it was completely my fault. It was, in some toxic relationships where I was the toxic person. And I started to really question and thought, okay, I actually think I need to make a big change here. Right, I need to do something bold. I need to do something different. So I had the opportunity to try MDMA, and it was absolutely life changing for me. Like really rapidly for me, changed me from like a pessimist to an optimist. You hear this term open-hearted, which I know your audience is familiar with. But it was the first time I felt open-hearted in maybe my entire life, or at least any time as like an adolescent or adult. I felt connected to the people around me, interested in the people around me. I felt at peace. I was able to start like analyzing and processing, and maybe like practicing self-inquiry without all the shields up, which only later I came to realize was complex PTSD. I had post-traumatic stress disorder from abuse, and MDMA is what helped get me through it and grow through it. And so for me, that catalyzed this thing that I thought was this like real secret that I had learned, that psychedelics were good for me. And so I started diving deep into the world of psychedelics personally and experimenting and using them therapeutically. I started introducing other people in terms of telling them about psychedelics and how they could be used therapeutically, developing all of my own tricks and tips and protocols for how I could use them to make me a better person for me and me a better person for the people around me. So imagine my surprise when maybe like a decade later, I discovered that a lot of the psychedelic therapy frameworks and protocols and practices that were really well established looked almost exactly like the ones that I had like independently thought came up with. I was like, my mind was blown when I found out that psychedelics were being used therapeutically for a long time, and that set and setting, intention setting, journaling. I didn't have a word like integration, but the idea of actually taking the insights and putting them into practice, and leveraging a neuroplastic window, which I didn't know that was a concept at the time. It blew my mind, and it felt like there was this. I'd converged at these things that it seems like a lot of other people have converged at. That to me belies some sort of underlying universal truth. So forever, for what feels like essentially my entire 2.0 adult life, 2.0 Dylan, I have been wanting to see psychedelics become accepted, legal, widely used, and used effectively to help people heal, grow, and do their work in the world in a much more compassionate, intelligent way. I was donating to psychedelic research and science for a long time. And so when it came time to start my third company, I really wanted to do something in mental health, and I really wanted to do something in psychedelic medicine, but I thought it was just too early. This was like middle of 2018. I think MDMA maybe just started phase 3 clinical trials. I think psilocybin just started phase 2 clinical trials. And I thought, I'm just way too early to this right now. Like, what a bummer. Like, if only this was 5 years later, or 3 to 5 years later, things taking a little longer. But if only it was a few years later, I could do a psychedelic medicine company. I was at lunch with my my really close friend, my personalized medicine doctor at the time in New York City, Dr. Andrew Kibbert, who, if you're in New York, I highly recommend checking him out. He's next level. And I was telling him about some of these ideas I had in mental health, and told him, as I think I'm really, really passionate about psychedelic medicine, and it's the future. It is going to change the world, but we're just it's a few years off. And so imagine my shock and delight when he told me, "Oh, well, I prescribe ketamine in my practice. It's super effective for depression." I told him, "You can't prescribe ketamine. That's crazy." And he said, "Watch me." He pulled out his prescription pad and said, "Oh, well, you have been prescribed things for anxiety for me, so you're qualified for ketamine therapy, and here's a prescription for ketamine therapy for, I think, anxiety." Slid across the table. But we put the script in. Medicine arrived. I did ketamine therapy for the first time, and it was right on the level as transformational as other experiences I'd had with other psychedelic medicines and a lot of different types of psychedelic medicines. My mind was blown. So I started looking into the space and saw that there were at the time, I think, dozens and dozens of peer-reviewed clinical studies showing ketamine therapy being effective. There was this proliferation of ketamine clinics, but they were not accessible to a lot of Americans. They're way too expensive for most Americans, like $800 to $1,200 a session, which my mailman father growing up would not have been able to afford for my mother or sister. Nobody knew about them, and nearly none of them had any sort of preparation, help with people, teaching people how to navigate psychedelic experiences, integration. I saw a collage of a bunch of pictures from clinics where people are like plugged into an IV, which I think we can talk about later, how ridiculous IVs are, that people are using those at all for ketamine therapy for mental health, and how much doesn't make any sense if you think about it. Plugged into IVs with a bag, the nurse over the mask over the head, and fluorescent lighting. And so I saw it's clear days. There's an opportunity here to have life's work and get to do it and get to help propel psychedelic therapy, starting with ketamine therapy, into the mainstream and craft the world's most artful, transformational, and effective psychedelic therapy experiences for people. And so that was the birth of MindBloom.
Right on. And what year was the founding?
I would say June 2018.
2018. Okay, cool. Yeah, generally when I try to think about like the history of at-home ketamine, I always go back to like the COVID era kind of exclusions for at home, but it sounds like you were doing this before COVID.
It was wild. So when I started MindBloom, the entire vision was to do at-home ketamine therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started MindBloom, I started like really exploring psychedelic ideas in about June. And I think I incorporated MindBloom in November 2018. So again, like I learned through one of my lifelong friends, a fraternity brother from college, about ketamine therapy. Well, I also learned a lot about telemedicine with two of my other fraternity brothers and lifelong friends. One is Andrew Dudum, the founder and CEO of Hims and Hers, who's a year younger than me in my fraternity. And my other is my friend Sam Levine, who's on my board, who's the co-founder at Candid, which was a very large like direct-to-consumer Invisalign company. So I learned through them a lot about telemedicine models. And I was looking at ketamine saying, well, what is a way that we can help propel ketamine therapy in the mainstream and make it a lot more affordable and accessible for people and get people better outcomes and experiences? And right as I was trying to figure that out, the two administrations ago passed legislation and Trump signed that was going this legislation that was going to force the DEA to create a construct to allow the prescribing of controlled substances like ketamine over telemedicine, like right as I was starting the company. And so right then I was like, literally in 1 to 2 years, we're going to be able to do ketamine therapy remote. And that's going to massively bring the cost down. It's really safe to do in home, in person, in home. I think a lot of people at the time thought that sounded dangerous, but if you actually know how it works, then it's not. And that's going to allow us to make this way more accessible, way more scalable, which is going to allow us to raise adequate funding to really bring this to people. And so that's the vision from day one. And so what we did was we started with a pilot facility in New York City where I was living at the time. So I started MindBloom sort of remote first, asynchronous oriented from day one, but we had a facility in New York. And so patients or clients would come in for their first 1 to 2 treatments in person, and then they'd have the option, if they wanted it, and the provider thought it was a great fit for them, to continue treatment remotely. And that way, we were able to test, do people want to do it remotely? Do providers feel comfortable prescribing it remotely? And are the clinical outcomes, the efficacy and safety, still great remotely? What we found is everybody wanted to continue remotely. The providers, were on board and built a lot of confidence, and they saw the outcomes, and the outcomes were spectacular. And so we were like, okay, great. We're going to continue building up the rails to launch this fully virtual once this DA process comes in place. And the DA was like shuffling their feet on it. And then COVID happened. And so when COVID happened, that could just completely accelerated the adoption, both the regulatory framework, provider adoption, patient adoption for all of telemedicine, including for us.
Mm. Cool. I love that. All right. So I remember some people getting really antsy around this whole at home ketamine situation. And I'm curious your perspective, because this is your whole model, right? Like, some people are like, if we don't do this right, the FDA's DEA is going to crack down and we can't do at home anymore, and we won't be able to prescribe off label anymore. Like, what's your kind of, like, when you kind of encounter that kind of conversation, how do you kind of take that?
I just keep asking why. Like, why, like, why do you think it's a problem? Why do you think it's unsafe? And nobody ever has a good answer. And so I think you kind of, when you have discussions like this, you encounter 2 types of people. And this I think applies to a lot of things. You encounter people who want to figure out what is true, and you have people who've already decided they know what is true, and they want to yell at you about it. And so when you ask why with people who want to figure out what is true, what you get to is the truth, which is that ketamine is incredibly effective and incredibly safe to do at home.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to yell at you about it. What I found is there's literally nothing you can show somebody to convince them otherwise.
Mm.
If you show them the biggest peer-reviewed clinical studies in ketamine therapy history, there are data, but they were done by independent researchers at MAPS, NYU, UCSF, Houston Methodist. These are the researchers who did the study, along with some people on our team who helped. They won't believe it. And so there's nothing you can show those people to get them to believe. Not logic, not clinical data and real world evidence, not the protocols and like what do we actually do, because it's not just ketamine shipped in the mail. Have fun. Hope it works out for you. We're spending on the order per client through a 6-session treatment program, something like 15 to 35, 40 hours of therapeutic support. It's a whole program protocol. There's so much built into it that we've built over, now 7 years with hundreds and hundreds of people who've worked here on it. But people, if they have this emotional reaction, they want to see it. That it's.
Mm-hmm. I have this really great Timothy Leary quote. So we're going to switch topics to LSD for just 10 seconds. LSD is a psychedelic drug which occasionally causes psychotic behavior in people who have not taken it. It seems relevant here. So I exist in like a pretty drug heavy culture, right? Like, the people who are actually in CAP and like doing ketamine therapy are not the people that develop like a problematic relationship to these things. Like, it's, often the case. I see folks like get really a lot better when they're in these therapeutic containers. And yeah, like, I think people, I had one friend going around saying, this is the next opioid epidemic. I'm like, this is not in any way similar at all to the opioid epidemic. And like, some of these folks have medical credentials, and I'm like, wow, this is really fascinating. You're a doctor and you're talking like that. So, I'm very pro cap. Like, I was, I think we started documenting the cap space in as early as like 2017 here. And I was even looking at rolling out like mobile clinics, like big Winnebagos that could roll around places like Montana, for instance, and those conversations didn't get super far, but like serving rural populations was the point. That's kind of what you're doing, right?
That was, I thought was really interesting. Early on, we get a lot of we get this criticism. And I would just think to myself, like, and talk to people about this, like, okay, well, and a lot of them from like existing providers doing it. And like, well, how much do you charge? $1,000 a session. Okay. How many people are in like a reasonable coverage area of you? Like where they can like reasonably have somebody else drive them to your clinic, sit with you, and drive them home. Which for my family would have been like near impossible. Like a single working class father taking care of two mentally ill women, my mom, my sister, and myself. Like it's really, really hard to find that time, much less the money, which we could barely afford a few sessions without it being, like really, really, really challenging. And you get to, and you're like, what about everybody else? Like, what about the people who can't afford it? What about the people who don't have access to a clinic at all? You just think they shouldn't get it? And yeah, it just seemed like I think there's this cognitive bias, and it's even you see with like hyper like even like autist VCs and investors, where we have an emotional reaction or an emotional decision, and then we find the logic and analysis to backwards fit the emotional decision. And so that's what I just kept seeing over and over again. I saw fear that it's going to be done poorly, and so it's going to ruin it for everybody. Fear that this is going to disrupt my model and hurt my ability to, whether it's like build a profitable business or practice, or just like provide great care and do your life's work. Like that's scary and feels threatening. And so it's like, show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome. Or never depend on a man knowing something, his salary depends on him not knowing it. I think there's just these biases, that confirmation bias, these biases that would prevent people from even like seeing the truth if it's right in front of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Um, can we talk about hotter news that just came? Was that just this week or last week that like some magazine put up a headline?
Oh, we're talking about the Wall Street Journal piece.
Was that the Journal? Good Lord. Yeah. So like Matt Perry was kind of like, a tragic story. Um when I talk to my friends, and I've talked about this on the show a bunch of times, right? Like using a drug like ketamine in the hot tub alone is a recipe for dying. Like that's not
It's a bingo
really,
card of things not to mix.
yeah, like yeah, I think the state found how to unplug me. Anyway, like can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I might not be going through the microphone now, though.
Cool.
I know I'm
So
saying it might not be going through your microphone. FYI, it sounds like a different audio.
yeah, it's hopefully better.
Okay,
Cool.
there you go.
So yeah, the idea is like blaming that kind of behavior on an operator like MindBloom doesn't seem genuine at all. This had the flavor of more of a Michael Jackson situation, right? Like kind of like a really out of control doctor just doing whatever. But I don't know, like how can you talk about like how they position that a little bit and like how you guys are trying to respond?
Yeah. So the Wall Street Journal published a headline lying that MindBloom killed Matthew Perry. We're suing them. They did it because they are captured by Johnson and Johnson's $1 billion Spravato scam. Johnson Johnson built a shadow opposition filing campaign that they're running against MindBloom and me personally. I got doxxed on TikTok and got literally hundreds of death threats to the point where the FBI was at my house trying to help me, wanting to go through my phone and telling me I needed a new number. I had to get a security team. And that is uh, how meaningful like these kinds of lies and the stigma are. We had tons and tons of clients who canceled treatment, reached out and said their family won't let them do treatment. And ketamine is the number one drug you prescribe someone for suicidality. In fact, ketamine is what literally saved my dad's life from suicidality. After my sister overdosed on fentanyl, and my dad found her dead, the color gray, on the floor of the bedroom that I grew up in as a child. And he called me when he found her as the police were coming. He was beyond suicide. He didn't leave the house, shower, or shave for 23 days. He was texting me things like, "Here are my passwords just in case. If anything happens to me, it's not your fault. Everything away. I have silver hidden all around the condo." And I really thought it was more like a night he was going to kill himself. Would not let me see him. But
Mm.
fortunately, that was finally the catalyst, because he's been clinically depressed for a long time, to get him to try psychedelic medicine, starting with ketamine therapy with us. He worked with our medical director, who I'll forever be beyond grateful to, for helping to save my dad's life. He went through multiple ketamine therapy programs with MindBloom, and he came out of it utterly transformed. Uh, Beyond besides the happiest that I've ever seen him in my entire life, he went from obese my entire life to my size. He lost 60 pounds. He reintegrated and started hanging out with his friends again. And he decided that he wanted to find like a life partner, a third act of his life. And so just last summer, I was a best man officiant and threw him a wedding to my new stepmom. And my dad, his number one thing, oh, goosebumps. My dad, his number one thing in life, his mission, his purpose, the way he derives meaning from life, is being an incredible father. Naval Ravikant had this great tweet that was like, you can find meaning in three ways: mission, God, children. You find at least one of the three. And so my dad now gets to be a father again to her stepchildren. They're like 8 and 15 that live with her. And it's, that is how powerful for a lot of people who are going through the mental health crisis. And 23% of Americans have a mental illness. There's 775,000 homeless people in the United States today, like my mom was and my sister was. And overdose deaths have like 5x in the last 20 years. Suicide's one of the least causes of death. So this is literally life or death if you use the most effective treatment that exists for these right now. And so by Johnson & Johnson and capturing the media and pushing tons of negative media stories, including this one that lied that we killed Matthew Perry, and stigmatizing ketamine therapy and stigmatizing other psychedelic medicines, and getting potentially MDMA therapy not approved at the last minute in a real 180, they are killing people for money. It's disgusting. It's evil. And so suing the Wall Street Journal, it's not just about like the damages done to us or whatever, retaliation. I don't care about that. Like, we're going to be here forever. We're going to be this for a long, long time. And this will be a blip this is a blip in terms of the movement to get the truth out there about psychedelic medicine and normalizing and mainstream and educate people. But they need to know that everyone needs to know that some of these media outlets are captured by big pharma and they can't be trusted. And everybody needs to know that that this is literally killing people, and it is promulgating and promoting and reinforcing this stigma that's been around forever, that a lot of people like you are working very, very, very hard to try to overcome. And it's one thing to promote stigma; it's another to lie to create stigma, and these are lies.
Yeah. I've been aware of a number of articles that have come out critical of ketamine being absolutely influenced by J&J and others who are against ketamine. And it's really wild. And this is not the first time. So I'm happy to hear you're taking a stand. Yeah, I think.
Want to hear something interesting? So before Spravato launched, nearly all the articles about MindBloom, but also other ketamine providers, were like overwhelmingly positive. Over the last several years, Spravato launched in 2018. Over the last several years, the switch from how media outlets, traditional media outlets, mainstream media outlets, were writing about other types of ketamine, it is stunning. And so now all of a sudden, all these articles about ketamine therapy that aren't Spravato are incredibly negative, mostly hit pieces. And the articles about Spravato are all super positive. It's like, $1 billion blockbuster drug. And so like, to give you some numbers, we did an analysis and helped use ChatGPT to look at the sentiment of big news stories, and it pulled something like 87 of the top stories around ketamine therapy and Spravato. And so it looked at like stories that were positive, neutral, and negative. Before Spravato launched, stories about ketamine therapy providers, all of them, not just MindBloom, were overwhelmingly positive. It was like a plus 45, promoter score, sentiment score. After Spravato, it drops down to like negative 25, like mostly negative stories. And it went something from like 17% negative stories to like 55% negative stories about normal ketamine. Spravato, on the other hand, is like plus 45 positive sentiment with like only 17% themselves negative stories now. And the thing about Spravato isn't just that it's Johnson & Johnson's drug. It's that it's way worse. So Johnson & Johnson got a drug. I still don't understand how they got the patent. A lot of my friends and her lawyers, her patent attorneys, and our patent attorneys also don't understand. I'm surprised it hasn't been refuted. And arguably, it's just because people like MindBloom haven't gotten together with others to do it. No one has like the money incentive to try to bring that suit. But they patented essentially half of ketamine, so S-ketamine. Ketamine comes out 50% S-ketamine, 50% R-ketamine. So when you're taking ketamine, you're actually taking 50% S-ketamine and R-ketamine, called enantiomers. So they essentially patented half of it, the S-ketamine, which has obviously existed forever. It claimed that it's less psychedelic, more therapeutic. Not true. And to get it, you have to go into an office. It's $1 billion scam. You go into an office, you have to sit there for a 2.5-hour observation period, which allows the provider to bill patients more because they're billing insurance for all this. You get a microdose essentially in your nose and you get sent on your way. So one, the cost of so there's price, there is outcomes, and then there's like accessibility. So on price, the cost of Spravato is like 88 times the cost of generic ketamine. The price of Spravato, which is literally just this nasal spray in the nose, is like 15 times the cost of MindBloom, where I just said that we're providing on the order of like 15 to like 40 hours of like therapeutic support and service both around and during ketamine therapy for people as a whole psychedelic therapy program. It's still wildly more expensive. So Spravato is treating like 2 to 3 times as many patients as MindBloom in the country, but they're making like insanely more money because it's so expensive. And so the reason that they're able to make it so expensive is because insurance companies pay for it. So payers like, United Health, Optum, Blue Cross Blue Shield, they don't really cover ketamine therapy, but they cover Spravato. And when an insurance company covers these medicines, what that really means is that like you're paying for it. So through Medicare and Medicaid, taxpayers are paying for it. So you're paying for it in the form of your tax dollars, or commercial insurers or like companies are paying for it. So both employers are paying for it in terms of the way that they're paying for your health insurance, and then they're going to pass that on in terms of lower wages because it's part of your like total compensation. So as companies, when Johnson & Johnson approves something like Spravato and people use it, like healthcare premiums go up, and companies have to pay more for health insurance. You have to pay more for health insurance, and Johnson & Johnson wins, and the providers providing it win because they're the ones billing it. 2, it's super inconvenient. You have to go into an office, sit there for hours, come back, and you're like literally just sitting there in a chair for 2.5 hours after doing a microdose of ketamine, that's ketamine. And 3, the outcomes aren't as good. So Spravato's outcomes in their clinical trials, like clinical trials are like carefully selected, manicured settings to drive the best outcomes possible, right? To get the drug approved. So usually lab data is way better than real world evidence data because real world evidence data is messy. It's providers actually doing the wild, while lab data from Johnson & Johnson, I think they're like the 24th most valuable company in the world today in the public markets is usually better. And it's actually worse. Their outcomes are like worse than MindBlooms. And you and I know it's the S-ketamine versus the ketamine. Definitely the dosing, because it's this microdose, which is not the ideal therapeutic dose for most people, much less everybody. And there's no really we have what's called a 3P dosing system at MindBloom. So our dosing is like personalized, it's precise, and it's proactive. So like we have this whole like product and feature and program to titrate people up to like the right therapeutic dose for them, whether it's sublingual or injectable medicine. It's one of the things I'm really actually love about what we do, because I've never had a doctor who calls me and it's like, "Hey, how's that dose? Do you need more?" when I'm taking medicine. So maybe it's the dosing, or maybe it's the fact there's no preparation. They don't teach you how to do anything during a session and navigate the experience. There's no integration whatsoever, and driving to and from a clinic is pretty bad preparation and integration. And it's in a sterile hospital, a sterile office. It's really awful.
Do you offhand know, like, this is a little too technical, do you know, like, roughly speaking, the dose, like, milligram wise in each spray?
I think it goes up to 82 milligrams.
Yeah, cool. And like the one like really ugly part, like one of many ugly parts
84.
of the Spravato story.
It goes to
84.
84.
Like physicians not being able to say like this is how much this client should get.
Sorry. There's actually looks like there's only 2 doses. You either get 56 or you get 84.
Yeah. That's cool. Okay, that's better than what I thought, Dylan, because I thought they only had one size fits all, which is a little bonkers. But yeah, that's good to know. All right, cool. So next up, so I've heard you say like therapeutic support and things like that. Like clearly the MAPS protocol is really unattainable for most people. Like if we're looking at how do we scale something, make it like in people's lives. A very expensive thing with 2 therapists for a few months, like that's untenable. And I'm kind of curious, like how do you talk about like what is MindBloom offering? Is it psychedelic assisted psychotherapy? Is it psychedelics with some support? Like how do you like to position that?
We call it guided at-home ketamine therapy or guided at-home psychedelic medicine. I mean, actually, what we call it's interesting. We were talking about CAP earlier. I totally forgotten until recently, like maybe a few months ago. I was reminded of this when I started MindBloom. We'd figure out what do we call it, and so at the time there was like KIT, ketamine infusion therapy, and CAP, ketamine assisted psychotherapy, and both of those felt unnecessarily complex for people. Like not great marketing. They felt unnecessarily complex and approachable, a little confusing, and a little like narrow too. So there's so many ways that you can provide a psychedelic and that you can provide support around it, but they also felt like a little excessively narrow. And so I decided to call it, the clinical team, I decided to call it ketamine therapy because it's like psychedelic therapy, ketamine therapy, seemed like reasonable, seemed like people could grab onto. And the reason I didn't remember the other day is because ketamine therapy is like 95% of what everybody calls it now. And it was one of those moments where I was like, oh, a little contribution that we made to the space, making a little simpler, a little more digestible for everybody. And I'm sure somebody at some point I called it ketamine therapy before that, but if you at the time, like in 2018, looked up ketamine, you would have seen ketamine infusion therapy or ketamine assisted psychotherapy everywhere. So we would call it guided at-home ketamine therapy, or ketamine therapy, or psychedelic therapy, or psychedelic medicine. And it's tough because kind of like psychedelic medicine, well, I guess it isn't fully ineffable, but we just provide so much, and it's so different and unique in terms of the product and the program and the facilitation. You can't really unfortunately reduce that down to like a few words. So what we do is really, the goal is like try to give people the equivalent of like an actual world-class, one of the best you could ever work with facilitator and program. Like I said, from the comfort and convenience of home at a price that everyday Americans can afford. And so the way MindBloom works is you get a psychiatric clinician you meet on Zoom who works with you from a sort of more traditional mental health care background and context, and does the prescription, the dosing, and also will work with you on mental health if the clinician, that relationship speaks with you, the more clinical relationship. We also have a very large group of guides who are trained transformational behavioral health and psychedelic medicine coaches who all have deep experience with medicine work. I think at this point we've interviewed, I would say, like 20,000 guides, hired hundreds, and gotten down to like the group of about 80 that we have today. They are like truly elite, best of the best. Like the team talks about how it's the acceptance rates to become a guide in MindBloom is significantly lower than the acceptance rate at Harvard. And the guides work with clients through both one-on-one integration sessions, like 45-minute integration sessions over Zoom. All of our clients get unlimited group integration sessions. So we do integration circles where like 4 to 7 clients, meet on Zoom, facilitated by a guide to share their experiences, support each other, and in real time, like a group therapy setting, get tips and content from the guides about what they're going through. We also offer unlimited messaging with your guide. So some clients like message their guide, like like they're their best friend, like night and day, working with them day to day to integrate. We have an online community of thousands of clients sharing their experiences and supporting each other, both on Facebook and in our mobile app. And the program itself looks a lot like psychedelic therapy. So we ship everybody a Bloom box, so a kit with like an eye shade, journal, some other things. I've got some behind right here, and we. But it's a pretty, I think, accepted psychedelic therapy protocol where clients set intentions before their sessions. They are laying down eye shade, music, soundscapes going inward, and they're journaling afterwards, and they're integrating between their sessions. But we built some really cool stuff that also is only enabled by being a technology company. So for instance, we found that a lot of clients actually like surprisingly have trouble with intention setting. So they have trouble with intention setting. They even over fixate on it. Like, am I saying the right intention or the wrong? Is my session going to be bad because I don't know how to set intention, which surprised me. And so one thing we did is we built like an AI guided intention setting tool. So it's guided intention setting where it asks the clients different questions and helps give them ideas for intentions to select from. And clients love it. During the sessions itself, I would say, like, when I think about psychedelic therapy, one framework I have in my mind is that like the nucleus of the experience is the quality of the medicine. So like if you get bad quality medicine, then your psychedelic therapy session is likely to not be very good. That's the nucleus, like the most important thing. And so we also spend a ton of time making sure that we have like the highest quality ketamine therapy, and we're also like really showing people how to take it effectively and doing like 3P, right? So personalized, precise, proactive dosing to give people the ideal therapeutic dose. That dose and quality of medicine is absolutely critical. From there, moving out, the next most important thing is like the music during the session, the soundscape. So it's what you're listening to and what's coming in, and also teaching people how to navigate going through a ketamine or psychedelic therapy experience. From there, it's like what we do right before and after. So the sense setting, the mindset or physical setting, things like intention setting to put you into a good mindset. And then journaling and integrating like right after, like makes sense of the experience. Especially with ketamine, where journaling right after experience is important because ketamine, the way it works in your brain, it's working on a neurotransmitter system that modulates a lot of memory. And so ketamine in particular can be a little dreamlike, and people can come out and like lose the memories or the insights. But if you journal right after the session, something that like allows you to get even voice journal during it, which has now been enabled through a lot of transcription technology in an easy way. It really coalesces the experience. If anyone's done a dream journal before, I guess a lot of your audience has journal on psychedelics, so they get it. But it really coalesces the experience and it sticks with people. And then outside of that, what you do before and after the experience is what you're doing in the days or weeks to integrate the experience. And so one of the things I'm most proud of recently, there's a few things. One is the soundscapes, the music that we've developed. I don't say this lightly. They're the best. It's the best ketamine music in the world. And it didn't always used to be the best ketamine music in the world. Early on, right when we launched MindBloom. So the way that I did it, we hired some like really incredible people who made the best music in the world. When I did it, it wasn't the best music in the world. And when I did it, we initially gave clients for each session, we gave them I think it was like a SoundCloud link to like a guided meditation. so that for the first 7 minutes while the medicine's coming on sublingually, it could give them some spoken word, like inspirational or thought-provoking, affirmations, to get them into get them more like grounded and ready for the session versus just running into it. And then from there, they can select from like one binaural beats or one ambient music track that was in SoundCloud, which like worked not that great, but okay for a while. And then SoundCloud started pushing ads really hard because I think they're trying to like drive revenue because they're in financial trouble and trying to stay alive. And so our clients started getting like McDonald's ads like 20 minutes into their ketamine therapy session. and so our scrambling to like figure out a better solution, we were just shipping clients like digital and even physical SoundCloud gift cards and like trying to make sure that they upgrade to SoundCloud Pro, which we'd pay for, so that they didn't get the ads. But now our music and soundscapes, we have like over 150. We're always upgrading them. We have a head of content composer who are Davis Carter and Alex Kahn, who are just next level. Our music strategy doc for how we now develop music for ketamine is like 13 pages long. We've synthesized thousands of sessions. We get session ratings and music ratings, audio ratings from people when they submit them afterwards. Kind of like Uber ratings, but a little more detailed that a lot of people go into about what they liked about things and didn't. And so we have 3 types of tracks. We have fully guided now, which we've launched about a year ago and built a bunch of tracks for. So these are like the sort of intent. The intro is guided to get you in a good setting or mindset. But then we have varying degrees of like guidance that's coming throughout the session for people, which some clients just absolutely love. I think especially if you're more like a psycholytic dose, where you can kind of are having more analysis and thoughts and can kind of think through things versus maybe more like a psychedelic or transcendent dose. Then we have intro guided, so like the guided intro, and then music only for people who like them. And yeah, I mean, I could, if we put in show notes or something, I could share like screenshots and demos. Like it's so cool. And then what we actually just launched in the past 6 months, it was the thing this year that I told the team, like, this is the number one thing that like, here's the CEO, you always got like a pet project and you get to say like, I have the magic wand. And so I'm just demanding that we do this, even if everyone else doesn't believe in it. And so for me, that was artwork. So it feels really like embarrassing to say I was in music for a long time as a listener. I don't have musical talents. My talents are talking and typing. But I never really got visual artwork. It didn't really speak to me. And so I'm embarrassed to say that the first time I really got visual art, I was at the first Burning Man that I was at. And I was at an Andrew Jones art exhibition. And one of, this was in 2015. And one of the, it was the first time I really got art. And actually, one of the inspirations for the name MindBloom is actually the piece behind me by Andrew Jones Fertility. And so I really wanted to, but I've had so many experiences through psychedelic medicine where I've seen things that are really meaningful, and I wanted to capture them, both for me to integrate and to share with other people. Like I want to see this and like I really want to show this to other people, but I'm not talented, so I couldn't do it. And now with generative AI, we can do that for people. And so now every MindBloom client is also a psychedelic artist. So right after your session, you can journal in your MindBloom journal, or you can voice journal directly into the app. We have a guided voice journaling where it prompts you with a few different questions. So like, what did you see, feel during your session? How might have connected to your intention, things like that. And then it gives clients in their journal in the app, it gives them like summaries of the key concepts that came up for them that they journaled on, with explanations that are generated by AI through their voice journaling. It gives them several different pieces of AI generated art that they can select from as like their cover art. And it gives them like AI integration ideas. So different ideas that come up from their session and from their background and their goals and things like that for how they might actually leverage the neuroplastic state from ketamine to actually make behavioral changes in their life, to put them on an upward spiral of better behaviors, better thoughts, better emotions, et cetera, a positive feedback loop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to like jump into another hot button thing we got into, like
Oh, and
before
by the
we
way, we have
started
like,
recording.
yeah, we can end there for now, but that's also like, we also have much more than that.
Yeah.
So we have to go through it, but just to give you a sense of how much more than just the medicine we provide, uh, it's a lot. And that's why we have the best clinically proven outcomes that I've seen in ketamine therapy at still a price that everyday Americans can still afford.
I think I need to spin up like a secondary brand that's just like ketamine today, and I can just like go through all these protocols and report back and like,
I think,
actually have some first person stuff.
I think it's a good idea because I also think one of the things we're trying to understand right now is we're talking. I mean, I talk to more clients than with the company. Um, well, other than our providers talk to more clients than with the company. So on call it the business team. I talk to the most clients than with the company, I think. And um, you know, really trying to figure out what is it that gets people to do ketamine therapy or psychedelic therapy, and also for us, like who are the right people for us, and why are they doing MindBloom? Um, because when I look at like the field, the thing that like keeps me up at night, right? The thing that just like is always in the back of the splinter of my mind, it's like bugging me and getting at me, is like why aren't way more people doing this? So 50 million Americans are prescribed SSRIs and take them, right? 50 million Americans get prescribed SSRIs. 25 million Americans are prescribed benzos, so like Xanax. 25 million Americans go to talk therapy. About 200 Americans do ketamine therapy, and that's including Spravato. Um, so, and I'd say MindBlooms, Spravato are probably a very large percentage of the overall market by patient volume. And so 200,000, despite the fact that when you look at the clinical outcomes for ketamine therapy versus SSRIs, Xanax, and talk therapy, it's a 10x better product for people's number one pain point in their life if they're really suffering anxiety, depression, and PTSD. It works for way more people with a way higher effect size or magnitude, like nearly no side effects, 10 times fewer side effects than SSRIs, and 10 times lighter side effects than SSRIs. And it's way faster than SSRIs. And same with like Xanax and talk therapy. And so, like, roughly, you look at this and you say, okay, 50 million on SSRIs, 25 million on both benzos and talk therapy. At least 20 million Americans should be doing ketamine therapy. And I'd argue that ketamine therapy is going to actually shrink the mental health market, and other psychedelics too are going to shrink the mental health market because that's actually going to solve people's mental health problems, and they won't have to use things like use medicines and treatments. And so we're like 100x off of that. So just the split in my mind is like, and the thing I'm always talking to people about and trying to figure out is like, what is that journey for people to go from, I have friends who've done it. I've talked to therapists who've done it. Tim Ferriss is talking about it. Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, they're doing it. Like, what is the thing that pushes somebody, over the edge, and how do we do that way faster? Because there are, as we talked about, like lives at stake, and both the lives of people suffering, but also the lives of people like me who grew up with the people suffering or around the people suffering. The children, the spouses, the colleagues, and yeah, I think it's like it's the billion heart, it's the billion heart question.
Yeah. So, I want to not rush you on this one, but I know we set for about an hour. Um, can you briefly give us a rundown on um, why MindBloom chose to include subcutaneous injectable ketamine as part of their offerings, and what you've seen in terms of like positive, negatives, etc.
So MindBloom offers two types of ketamine, right? Injectable, which is subcutaneous injection, and tablets, which are sublingual and buccal. So clients put them in their mouth, but then they spit the ketamine out after 7 minutes, so it's only absorbed like through your membranes in your mouth and not also orally. The reason that we started doing injectable ketamine is we decided that our clients were more important than our fear. like injectable ketamine is the gold standard in ketamine therapy. It's the best route of administration for ketamine therapy. And the reason that we weren't doing it is because we were afraid. We were afraid of the optics of sending people injectable ketamine in the mail. So when we initially launched our pilot facility, I personally tried as a ketamine therapy patient myself, nearly every route of administration, although these compounding pharmacies are getting pretty creative. So they're coming up with ones I'd never heard of. I just heard of a rectal cream for ketamine on a podcast I was on last week. Made me look like an idiot. So I never heard of it. And then the other host was doing it. And I tried lots of routes of administration. Our medical director, Dr. Leonardo Vondo, who's a national renowned addiction psychiatrist and a ketamine therapy provider himself, before MindBloom, and our other clinical leaders and clinicians and advisors, and all also done a lot of ketamine therapy in their private practices. We all knew and arrived at the same thing, which is injectable ketamine is the best ketamine. And so it's the best in terms of the dosing, client experience, and probably outcomes. And so when we launched our pilot facility in New York City, we did injectable ketamine there. So clients could come in for injectable ketamine. So MindBloom has been doing injectable ketamine since, call it spring 2019. And our providers have been doing injectable ketamine. We probably, they collectively have hundreds of years of clinical experience doing injectable ketamine. Mm-hmm. Which I think is interesting. It's like, I can't believe MindBloom is doing at-home injectable ketamine. They don't know what they're doing. It's like our providers collectively have hundreds and hundreds of years of experience doing injectable ketamine with hundreds of thousands of ketamine therapy patients. We know what we're doing. They know what they're doing. So since we went fully virtual in like spring of 2019, when COVID happened, one of the things that's just been bugging me most, like when I say bugging me most, I mean every time I do MindBloom, it bugs me, which is probably about once a month myself. I'm a MindBloom client. Every time I do MindBloom, every time I read customer tickets where people are noting the taste of the medicine, having some challenges like dialing in their dose because it's just more volatile in terms of how it gets absorbed. Same with nasal spray. It just eats me up inside that we weren't doing injectable ketamine because the only reason we weren't doing it was fear. And so one of the things that really changed for me is my dad. Is that I was already so passionate about psychedelic medicine. And I think about like, could it have saved my mom and could it have saved my sister? And I've seen so many lives and families destroyed. But seeing chills again, goosebumps, seeing me convinced, like I prepared for my dad to kill himself. I had I have a memento mori ring, so it's a skeleton, tiny little diamond eyes and a ruby heart. It's memento mori. It's like remember mortality, right? Like if you remember you're going to die, puts things into perspective, lets you be bolder, drop the little things. Kind of the Confucius quote: "Every man has two lives, and the second begins when he realizes he only has one." And so I think about death a lot personally. I meditate on death. I've had a near-death experience that like validated for me that that I'm really not like afraid to die, and life will feel whole and complete for me at this point. Although I still want to experience and do and accomplish and contribute to others a lot more. And so I had like sat with my dad and like accepted like he's gonna kill himself, and it's gonna be tragic and sad, but he lived a full life. But I just really wish he could have had a loving partner, which he didn't have with my mom, to say the least. I wish he could have seen his grandchildren, which I'm be having pretty soon. I wish he could have he deserved more because he's just such an incredible man and my hero. He gave so much to me. And so seeing ketamine therapy take him not just from suicidal to not and save his life, which was incredible in and of itself, but to the happiest I've ever seen him, like happily married to a babe that's way out of his league, and now getting to be a dad again to her stepkids and going to soccer practice with him, coaching soccer, football practice, all of it again. The thing that gave him the most meaning in life, literally every time I talk to him, just all the time, just hearing that in his voice. I mean, I think it changed. I think it changed a little bit of me. It's like I thought I already had this burning fire and electricity to help bring this to people and help them get the best experiences. But it just like 5x after that. And I think for me, just ignited like that. This is, people need this, and we have to be more bold and courageous. And I need to be more bold and courageous as a leader. And so I looked at the things that we were being soft on. I was being soft on, and injectables are the thing that I thought all the time. It's just the best ketamine, and we're not providing it to people because we're scared, and that's bullshit. And at the time too, we MindBloom was more Lindy. We've been around a long time. We had peer-reviewed clinical studies. A lot of other providers were doing it. The new administration in the government today is very, 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 very psychedelic forward and friendly. And we thought now's the time. Well, maybe they weren't in office yet, but that was the prediction. That was what was going to happen. So we did a 1-year pilot. It was like a multi-phase, like five-phase pilot over 1 year. Piloting at-home injectable ketamine. We had an independent medical review board who was like reviewing the protocols, reviewing all the outcomes, and we played it really safe, arguably excessively safe, because every day we're not getting the best ketamine therapy to people. Might be a day that a life's not transformed or saved, and doing great. Like, about, I think, vast majority of our clients, like who tried both, like 81% prefer the injectables over tablets. The side effect profile is the same. It's like less than 5% of clients have side effects, and they're light. The adverse event profile is similarly safe. And the clinical outcomes are incredible. So whereas around 90% of our clients see improvements, we also look at clinically significant improvements. So what percentage of clients get it's 5 points on like these standard scales, but like a clinically significant improvement, like a holy shit improvement in their depression, or anxiety, or PTSD. It's 80% of clients who are doing injectable ketamine are getting like holy shit improvements in anxiety, depression, or PTSD. And so after a year, we said, okay, we did this pilot. We published a white paper on it, which we can put in the show notes, for 952 clients. And that was something like 3,400 injectable sessions, and said people love the experience. It's really safe. The outcomes are incredible. And there's a big need, because there are a lot of people who they don't want to do the tablets, or they don't want to do intranasal. They want to get the injectable or IV. And so they're paying a lot of money. It's really inconvenient for them, and it's a barrier to treatment. And so now, a lot of those people who were in clinics previously are working with us, which, in addition to being more affordable and more convenient, it's also now they're getting the full MindBloom facilitation and program, which is giving them way better outcomes than they're even getting. One thing that I think is really interesting is IV versus injectable. So when I started MindBloom, I think still today, predominantly clinics provide IV ketamine therapy. Like I said, I personally did a lot of different routes of administration. Our providers have provided a lot of routes of administration, and we're all like scratching our heads like, I don't get it. IV compared to injectables sucks. It especially sucks if you are a mental health patient with no experience and a lot of fear around ketamine or psychedelic medicine. And so here are the reasons that injectables like way better than IV for most patients. So one is when you do injectable, it's a little insulin needle. It's like a little mosquito bite. You can barely see the needle, and you inject it into your stomach here, and then it's done. Hands free. When you do an IV, you're plugged into an IV. Like, you're literally laying there on ketamine with your arm plugged into an IV. So if you move, the IV can fall. Like, you're strapped down. It's not a comfortable way to undergo a dissociative psychedelic experience. Two, the onset is much better with injectable. So the injectable, it's like depending on whether it's sub-Q or potentially IM, it's like called 2 to 5 or 7 minute onset. It's like taking off in an airplane. It's just smooth and perfect. With IV, it's like being blasted off in a rocket ship. It's 0 to 1,000 in a couple seconds. And so for a lot of people going into ketamine therapy, they're nervous. I'm still nervous sometimes when I'm injecting ketamine therapy. And I have a lot of experience with psychedelics and ketamine therapy specifically. They're really, really, really nervous. And if that first experience, if it starts off, the sort of liftoff is scary and horrifying, people panic. And that contained the entire experience. So people also, I think, just overwhelmingly it's much safer in terms of like negative dissociative experiences or negative psychedelic experiences, injectables versus IVs. And it's also, it's like a better experience. And so I thought about well, so why are people providing IVs? It literally makes no sense. It makes no sense. And I asked a lot of providers, why? And what I heard from people is, well, that's what the research says. The studies say IV. And so then you just keep asking again, why? Why do the studies say IV? Well, the reason the studies say IV is because a lot of the early ketamine therapy providers were anesthesiologists and ER doctors. Why were they ER doctors? Well, because that's who's providing ketamine. And so the idea was, ketamine, I know how to do ketamine. I do ketamine, provide ketamine all the time. I'll roll out into a ketamine clinic. And there's a good reason that anesthesiologists and ER doctors are using IV. Ketamine's better than IV for their use case. They might need to put people on a bunch of things, so they're dropping things into an IV with multiple medicines. They might need to modulate the dose up or down, or you come in and they want to knock you out right away. They don't want a smooth onset. If you come in with a broken leg or a gunshot wound, they want to put you out right away. And so there are a variety of reasons that make sense for why they're doing it. But it was just a bad meme that propagated.
Yeah. I want to ask one final question. We can work towards wrapping up. And yeah, thanks for your patience still and going over time here. So the final thing, like you can do the Matt Perry thing, but like the more common thing I'm seeing in Colorado, where there's a substantial amount of overuse of ketamine, is like a bladder situation, which I'm told is really rare in clinical situations, but some people can develop some bladder pain from ketamine here and there, and that can be a leading indicator of needing like a bladder treatment of some kind. Like how do you all kind of handle this particular bladder problem?
So I think maybe is the question you're asking. If not, we can circle back to the question you're asking. I think one of the big narratives that I hear around why ketamine is really dangerous is that it's addictive. Ketamine's addictive. If you provide ketamine therapy to people, they're going to get addicted to ketamine, and it's the next opioid crisis. The thing is, ketamine's not addictive. Period. So there's like two types of addiction, if you want to get like specific, right? There's addiction, which is physical addiction, which is that your body develops a physical dependency on a drug. It craves it, and you take it away, it has withdrawals. You can get sick. And there are certain drugs, alcohol is one of them, I believe heroin as well, where if you take it away from somebody, the withdrawals are so intense it can kill them. And that's not ketamine. So caffeine is addictive, nicotine is addictive, alcohol is addictive, a lot of painkillers, opiates are addictive. Ketamine is not addictive. And then there's psychological dependency, which some people call addictive, but it's literally not addiction. They're misusing the term. And so psychological dependency is something where some people are prone to relying on it excessively, to depend on it. I would argue it's to escape into it. What we see from clinical data, both at MindBloom across over 654,000 sessions now and counting, and other providers in their data, is that there is, as far as I've been able to find, and I would love for someone to show it because I keep asking for it, no one can show me, there's zero evidence that when you go in to do ketamine therapy in a clinical setting or at home through clinical providers, to do it actually therapeutically, that anyone develops a psychological dependency on ketamine. And if you ask people who use ketamine therapy, they're seems bonkers to them that this would be something
Mhm.
you would overuse. Uh, Now, you do see psychological dependency develop in high risk populations. So, people who do a lot of recreational drugs, hospital workers or veterinarians have unlimited access, and also have are using recreational drugs. Drug dealers have unlimited access, massive access to ketamine therapy. It seems to be something that is something that people use to escape if they are having an issue. I also think, and I actually want to do some research on this myself, actually. I also think the conversation on dependence could use some development, because the question is always like, what's the substitute? So, like, are some with a psychological dependency to something, or did they have a psychological dependency to something beforehand and they switched to this, or were they dependency free beforehand? Because just this is all anecdata, but just thinking through the people I know have had problems with things, if it's one thing or the other. It's like they're going through something where they are looking for something to escape. They something grabs them to escapes into, and if you tear that thing out, they immediately find something else. Um, but it's still a problem. And so with the bladder issue, what I believe the clinical data shows is you see it in people who generally have a massive overuse issue. We're talking like the amount of ketamine that people have to overuse. And as the founder of MindBloom, I get texts and phone calls from people all the time who say, "Hey, myself or somebody I know, I'm wondering if they have an issue." I ask them a very short list of questions, and one is, "Do they have bladder pain? The other, does it hurt when they pee? Is their stomach hurt at all?" That's the most common one I hear. Um, and then I ask how much they do ketamine, and it's usually pretty much every day, a lot of it. And then they want the solution, which is like the solution is they need to stop doing ketamine for a good long time. And they're like, is there any other solution? The answer is like, probably not. um, but I do hear a lot like at home ketamine or injectable ketamine is a really funny one. If we inject it, people are going to get dependent on it. It's like much more challenge. I think, challenging to overuse that. Are going to develop a dependency, but we don't see any clinical data. Uh, and there have been, I've seen publications who are able to like find a story of somebody who went to a ketamine clinic and got it. But those people almost always, pretty much that I've seen, were also using stuff before that. Like they weren't just pursuing it for mental health issues. They'd already been using ketamine, and it set something off for them. But they were, yeah,
Yeah. So when, to further your point a little bit, like I and a number of my peers are price sensitive to drugs, right? So like I'm not going to go drug seeking for
price elastic.
yeah, like I'm not necessarily going to a clinic like seeking drugs, right? Because that's a different container. It's also the price is often higher because there's a lot that goes with that container. Um and like, some people do that, sure. But like it's got to be a rarity for these like high drug using populations. And like I
Well, sorry, go ahead.
and a final point, like the overdose thing, or sorry, withdrawal thing. Heroin you can detox from pretty easily. It's benzodiazepines and alcohol are largely the two
You're right.
most dangerous ones to withdraw from. Like if somebody's really unhealthy from too much heroin, potentially the withdrawal could be really harmful. It's better to do it supervised. But sorry, where were
Yeah,
we going?
I love you said that, because and there's one thing that MindBloom has taught me. I personally had a stigma against ketamine for a long time. Burning Man music festivals in psychedelic containers saw ketamine as a horse tranquilizer, and we'd be like, I don't get it. Why are people zonking themselves out on these horse tranquilizers? And then once I did ketamine therapy, it was like, that like like all the other things that I had been open to, for some reason I drew that line there without actually like doing any actual research, actually like diving into it, like just had that stigma myself. And like say I had that stigma with heroin as well. I thought it is that the withdrawals aren't that bad and dangerous.
Yeah. I'm making a sign for Burning Man this year, and this is like tacking on to your kind of thing here. Like I think it's okay in the recreational world. I just wish people would make it more special, as opposed to like it needs to be there all the time, and it's like you're offering somebody water. And I think that's just not the right kind of way to be using this in the recreational world. So my sign that I'll make at Burning Man, it's kind of like a Cookie Monster thing. Like ketamine is a sometimes snack, and it's
Yeah,
you know, daily is problematic.
it's very problematic. We were talking about this earlier as the substitutes. So I think it is not. It's a bad thing how much ketamine has sort of mimetically propagated into you know dance social settings. I always think it's like not. It's just kind of it's like it's anti. It's kind of it's a psychedelic. It's associative psychedelic on that, and so like it's kind of antisocial. It's anti-sexual, which is obviously a big reason people go out and why they drink alcohol. Um, um, and so I do think it is like overused, and that there are better social lubricants and psychoactives and enhancers for people. Um, but we are talking earlier about the substitute. Taking the other side, it would be that what the people are substituting it for, right? So I think what we're seeing is that a lot of people are substituting for alcohol, um, and so
Right.
yeah, and so when you actually look at it like that, you're like, okay, well, they're better substitutes, so we should get people into better substitutes, and but it's still a substitute for alcohol, and in that way, it's actually a good thing because alcohol is on drug harm scales the number one most dangerous drug, uh, harm to self and harm to others, and but so I just feel like there's just sometimes that a lot of like discussions around everything, but when we're talking about stuff like medical care, recreational psychoactives, they get really siloed, and like there's not a lot of nuance or second or third order consequences or like cause and effect that people are looking at. And I feel like that's another example. It's like, but people do way too much ketamine. It's like yes, but there's substituting for alcohol, and we actually would have been like it'd be really great if people instead of drinking alcohol did this from a public health perspective.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Dylan, thanks so much for this. I know you went a little over what we promised and agreed to, so thank you for that. Uh, I hope we can do more. There's, plenty of stories we can get into, and I'm hopeful that ketamine therapy will be a huge part of the future of mental health care here. It's here. We know it's safe. We can do it really skillfully. Um, LSD and MDMA are going to take a while, tragically. Uh,
We'll
I,
see. I'm
I might
bullish.
work on a legalization campaign here in
I'm
Colorado. Let me know
I'm
if I shouldn't.
I'm
But
very bullish on MDMA. I think the new administration, yes, we've spoken to them a lot. They believe in MDMA, and the
do you
FDA
think
still
you'll be able to do at home?
you should be able to. I think so. I have this view. It's someone that when MDMA got rejected, I was much more upset personally than I was like for MindBloom, the business. It's an interesting compartmentalization, by the way. There's like my personal relationship with psychedelics. We talk constantly about like what's good for our clients and what's good for the business, because if the business dies, then we can't help clients. Actually, other people will die. So we both have to build a healthy business so that we can continue supporting clients and keep investing in new things, like a bunch of things we talked about, to help improve treatments and outcomes and experiences. And so when got rejected, I thought, well, from my own perspective, so personally, I'm like, it offends my sensibilities. I'm enraged. The fact that the FDA essentially said no to MDMA, and assuming it takes another couple of years, yes to another 23,000 suicides, is egregious. The fact that the FDA says it's still Schedule 1, which means no accepted medical use, and so that we don't have enough data to say there's accepted medical use. Like all we need is common sense. Hey, let's talk to the thousands and thousands and thousands of people who've done it. And so, but from my most perspective, I think maybe it's a good thing. And I actually think long-term patient perspective could be a good thing, because I think the last FDA was going to over index on REMS to like be safe, or like excessive safety, and even excessive safety theater, They're going to have safety theater. They're going to have restrictions on it they were going to really limit patient access and make it really expensive and hard to access for a lot of people in ways that weren't sensible at all. And I think my prediction is that the new administration, when they approve it, which could be, I think, a lot sooner than people think, uh, I think that they are going to have much more sensible restrictions, risk evaluation mitigation strategies, REMS, and I really hope that they take a really, really good look uh, at home MDMA therapy. Um, and there's a difference between like at home alone or at home supervised. So maybe I think my MindBlooms model for ketamine therapy totally works for MDMA therapy. I don't think you need someone there supervising. Psilocybin, I think you do need someone there supervising, or some sort of mechanism to really be able to supervise people. Maybe there's a remote patient monitoring mechanism. I haven't thought that all the way through. But there's no reason that even MDMA you need to be supervised, but at least allow people to do it in home supervised, because I mean, again, just thinking from first principles and throwing out the psychedelics in the mail sounds scary, but actually asking why, and looking at how it works, the data, both, taking into account patient access and how important that is. And so I think there's a good chance that MDMA therapy and even eventually others will be able to be in home.
Yeah. All right, Dylan. Where can people find out more about MindBloom?
We're at mindbloom.com. And you can follow me on X at Dylan Beynon, or on LinkedIn.
Beautiful. All right, Dylan. Thank you so much. Hope we can do it again, and we'll see you backstage.
Likewise, Joe. This is a blast. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.